I never intended to become an entrepreneur. I was supposed to be a mechanical engineer, working at a steady 9 to 5 job with a predictable career path, maybe a few promotions, a decent retirement plan, and a quiet life. But life, in its charmingly chaotic way, had other plans. Back in 2015, I was in my final year of engineering school. I wasn't at the top of the class, but I wasn't struggling either. I had a solid internship lined up at a respectable automotive company, and everyone around me was either prepping for grad school or finalizing job offers. That was when my roommate, Sanjay, dragged me to this tech meetup. I didn't even want to go. He promised pizza and beer, and honestly, that's all it took to convince me. The meetup was about disrupting traditional supply chains. Sounds boring, right? But something about one of the speakers, this guy who built a small logistics SaaS company from his garage and sold it for $10 million, hit me hard. He was just a regular dude, not some genius with billionaire parents. He figured out a specific pain point in a niche industry, built a solution, hustled hard, and made it. That night, something flipped in me. A few weeks later, Sanjay and I were tossing around ideas. Nothing serious, just brainstorming over cheap whiskey and ramen. He mentioned how his cousin, who owned a small textile business, constantly struggled to find reliable transportation for his finished products. The big logistics companies were too expensive, and the local truckers were unreliable or disorganized. That's when it clicked. What if we build a platform to connect small businesses with vetted, affordable truckers on demand? We called it Load Up. We built the first prototype using WordPress and a hacked-together Google form. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. Sanjay reached out to his cousin and a few other small businesses in his network. We offered super cheap rates to get started, essentially running at a loss, just to validate the idea. By early 2016, we had about 25 regular business users and a rotating network of around 40 truck drivers. We were managing everything manually, literally waking up at 5 a.m. to call drivers, matching them with pickups, tracking them via WhatsApp, and dealing with complaints all day. It was exhausting. But every time a client said, "You made this so much easier for me," it fueled us. After a few months, we realized this wasn't sustainable without proper tech. Neither of us was a developer, so we posted in a local Bangalore tech group looking for someone to join us. That's how we found Aditi, a junior backend dev working at a fintech startup. She was intrigued by the concept and agreed to help us build a basic MVP in exchange for equity. By the end of 2016, we had a working app. It wasn't fancy, but clients could log in, request a pickup, and get matched with a nearby trucker. We raised a small friends and family round, just about $30,000, to keep the lights on and pay Aditi something. With that money, we upgraded our back end, started doing local Facebook ads, and finally paid ourselves a tiny stipend. Then came the first real challenge: scale. By mid-2017, we were in 4 cities, had 500-plus active users, and were coordinating over 100 shipments per day. But we were bleeding money. Our pricing model was too generous, and customer service issues were piling up. Truckers would cancel last minute, clients would delay payments, and disputes became daily headaches. We knew we had to professionalize. So we started creating a rating system for truckers, added penalties for last-minute cancellations, and set up automated invoicing. But even then, cash flow was a nightmare. There were nights I'd lie awake calculating how many more weeks we could survive. We barely made payroll some months. One time, I borrowed money from my mom pretending it was for a dental emergency. In early 2018, we pitched to a small VC fund. They liked our numbers, but they didn't believe in the team. 2 engineers and a part-time developer aren't going to build a logistics empire, one of them told us. That one stung. We didn't get the money, but it lit a fire under us. We brought Aditi on full-time, hired a business development guy who knew how to talk to SMEs, and started tracking every metric obsessively. By 2019, we were finally cash flow positive. We had crossed $1 million in annual recurring revenue. Our app had been downloaded over 50,000 times, with active users in 6 states. We were no longer calling truckers manually. We had real-time tracking, smart route suggestions, and a dashboard for businesses to manage logistics. It still wasn't glamorous, but it worked. Then COVID hit. Everything came to a grinding halt. Demand dropped by 80% in March 2020. Truckers refused to work, businesses shut down, and we suddenly had zero income. We could have quit then. A lot of startups did. But we pivoted fast. We saw a sudden rise in demand for essential goods, groceries, medicines, cleaning supplies. So we repositioned Load Up as a last-mile delivery service for essentials. We onboard local Kirana stores and pharma distributors, offering same-day delivery. It was chaotic but life-saving. That pivot saved us. By the end of 2020, we were making more money than before. We realized the future wasn't just B2B logistics, it was hyper-local delivery infrastructure. We raised a seed round of $1.2 million in early 2021 and used it to build a full-stack logistics solution, warehousing, inventory tracking, and delivery, all in one. Today, in 2025, Load Up operates in 40 cities. We process over 10,000 shipments a day, employ 300 people full-time, and support over 15,000 drivers on our platform. We've even started working with government agencies to digitize rural supply chains. Sometimes I still wake up and can't believe it all started with a drunken conversation over ramen. I'm not some genius founder. I'm just a guy who kept showing up, day after day, through screw-ups and setbacks. If you're thinking of starting something, do it. Not because you want to be rich or famous, but because solving a real problem feels better than any salary ever could. Oh, and don't underestimate the power of pizza and beer. That night changed my life. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. I never thought selling cereal online would change my life. Back in 2018, I was stuck in a cubicle doing graphic design for a mid-sized furniture company in Ohio. My boss was one of those guys who used phrases like circling back and run it up the flagpole, and every time he spoke, a tiny part of my soul tried to escape through my eyeballs. I was 29, barely making rent, and living in a shared house with 3 roommates who all hated each other. On a cold February morning, I got an email that would accidentally light the fuse. It was from my younger cousin Danny, a sophomore in college, asking if I remembered the old Cinnamon Galaxy Crunch cereal from the 90s. I did. I loved that cereal. The cinnamon stars and little planet-shaped marshmallows. It disappeared around 2002, and I hadn't thought about it in years. I posted a quick nostalgia tweet about it during my lunch break. Didn't think much of it. But when I checked back an hour later, it had over 3,000 likes. Comments flooded in from people reminiscing about that same cereal. Some even posted pictures of half-eaten boxes they'd kept as memorabilia. Why? The internet is weird. It clicked. Nostalgia was a market. I spent that weekend Googling discontinued cereals and was stunned. People were paying upwards of $50 on eBay for unopened boxes of old cereals. Some of it probably wasn't safe to eat, but clearly, people were buying them for the memories, not the breakfast. That Monday, I filed for a business name, Cereal Hunter. At first, I just started by scavenging eBay and local listings. I bought up any unopened or sealed cereal boxes from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. I used my design skills to make a halfway decent Shopify site and listed everything I had. I marked up prices 100% to 300% and targeted millennial nostalgia ads on Instagram. I called it breakfast time travel. The first week? Nothing. Not a single sale. The second week, someone bought a box of French Toast Crunch from 1997 for $70. It cost me $22 in shipping. I couldn't believe it. I messaged the guy to say thanks and asked why he bought it. His response? My brother passed away last year. We used to eat this every Saturday morning watching X-Men cartoons. I wanted to feel that again. That shook me. It wasn't just cereal. It was memory, emotion, comfort in a box. So I leaned in. I added stories to every product description, little fake commercials, nostalgic scenarios like wake up in 1995 and pretend you're not about to fail your algebra test while pouring a bowl of Jet OS. It worked. Within 6 months, I was selling around $3,000 to $4,000 a month. Enough that I was seriously thinking about quitting my job. But I hit a problem. The supply was drying up. You can't exactly mass order 20-year-old cereal boxes. I needed a pivot. That's when the idea came. What if I recreated these cereals? Of course, I wasn't a food scientist. I barely knew how to boil pasta. But I did know branding and marketing. So I partnered with a small local cereal manufacturer in Michigan. I pitched the idea, let's create small batch runs of inspired by versions of discontinued cereals. Similar taste, new name, and a heavy dose of retro branding. They were hesitant at first, but I offered to front the design and branding for free. We created our first product in 2 months, Star-Lord Cinnamon Clusters, a tribute to Cinnamon Galaxy Crunch. I shot an old-school commercial on VHS, ran retro ads with 90s fonts, and paid a few TikTokers to pretend it was a real vintage cereal. It blew up. We sold out 500 boxes in 2 days. I reinvested every penny and made 2 more, Saturday Morning Squares based on Waffle Crisp, and Monster Mallows, a Frankenstein of Count Chocula and Lucky Charms. Sales hit $12,000 that month. I officially quit my job in March 2019. Now here's where things got wild. In December of that year, Netflix released a docuseries on retro foods. One of the producers found my cereal site, bought a few boxes, and contacted me. They wanted to do a short segment on the cereal nostalgia guy. I said yes. We filmed for 2 days. It aired in early 2020. By the next morning, I had over 10,000 emails. I wish I could say I was ready, but I wasn't. My site crashed. My inventory was gone in hours. I had to hire 3 temporary workers just to answer emails. But out of that chaos came investors, brand deals, and actual cereal industry people who wanted to help me scale. By the end of 2020, Cereal Hunter had transformed into a real company. We dropped the eBay model and went full in on original retro cereals. We now had a 6-product line, a monthly subscription box called Saturday Mornings, and a full-time staff of 7. One of our craziest wins? We got licensing rights from a defunct 90s cartoon studio to do tie-in serials with shows like Captain Critter and Turbo Turtles. They let us create fictional serials from shows that never had any, and fans went nuts. Revenue in 2021 was $2.3 million. It's 2025 now, and I'm sitting in our new warehouse/office in Columbus, Ohio, writing this while eating a bowl of Space Cow Bites, our new April drop. I still design the boxes myself. Still write the weird descriptions. We even have a hotline people can call to hear fake 90s cereal jingles. Yes, really. Sometimes I think about how random it all was. One tweet. One old cereal memory. And now I'm the guy who sells made-up breakfast to grown adults who just want to remember what it felt like to be 10 years old with no responsibilities and a spoon in hand. Here's the lesson. Don't chase money. Chase weird. Chase emotion. Chase something only you remember and bring it back to life. That's where the magic is. And always eat breakfast. You never know where it might take you. I never set out to be an entrepreneur. I wasn't that kid selling lemonade on the corner or flipping sneakers in high school. Honestly, I was just trying to get by. The story starts with a broken laptop, a layoff notice, and me sitting on the floor of my tiny studio apartment eating dry cereal because I couldn't afford milk. It was 2017, and I had just gotten laid off from a mid-tier marketing agency. They called it a strategic reorganization. I called it, I can't pay rent. I had around $280 in my checking account and no backup plan. The laptop broke 2 days after the layoff. I remember staring at the blank screen, knowing I couldn't even afford a repair. So, I started doing everything from my phone. Emails, Google Docs, job applications. Desperation made me resourceful. One night, at 2 a.m., I was scrolling through Reddit, of course, and stumbled on a thread about niche content marketing. Someone mentioned making decent money writing super specific blog content for boring industries. Not exactly glamorous, but I was intrigued. The next morning, I created a free Wix website and slapped the words "content marketing for unsexy businesses" in bold letters. I posted the link on r/for-hire and r/freelance. I didn't even expect a reply. But 2 days later, I got a DM from a guy running a septic tank service in Ohio. He wanted 10 blog posts about common septic issues in winter. No joke. He paid me $300 upfront via PayPal. I screamed into a pillow for a solid 5 minutes. I wrote those 10 articles on my phone, one finger tapping at a time. It was exhausting, but when he emailed me back asking for 20 more, I knew I had something. I branded myself as the niche content guy. HVAC systems, B2B logistics, industrial forklifts. I wrote about all of it. I found my clients on Reddit, Twitter, Facebook groups, and Upwork. I wasn't making much at first, maybe $800 a month, but I was surviving. Barely. 6 months in, I borrowed a friend's old laptop, shout out to Jake, and managed to scale to $2,000 per month. Not enough to live well, but enough to stop eating dry cereal. Then I landed a Big Fish, a company that specialized in anti-vibration mounts for construction equipment. Yeah, I didn't know what that was either, But they needed 50 pages of SEO content for their website. They paid $4,000. I felt like I had won the lottery. Here's where things got real. That client referred me to another, then another. I was working 12-hour days, but now I was making close to $6,000 a month. It wasn't just me freelancing anymore. It was a business. I filed for an LLC, Quiet Growth Content. No employees, just me and some freelance writers I found on Reddit and Slack channels. I paid them fairly, kept my margins slim, and focused on quality. I didn't want to become one of those content mills that churned out garbage. By late 2018, I hit my first $100,000 year. Here's the twist. I started to hate it. It sounds crazy, I know. But I was spending all day editing forklift articles and researching wastewater management trends. I was burning out hard. I'd built this whole thing from scratch, but I felt like a cog in a machine I created. So I did something stupid. Or genius. Still not sure. In 2019, I paused all new client intake. I took a month off. No emails, no content, nothing. I stayed in a cheap Airbnb in rural Vermont, walked in the woods, and thought about what I wanted to do. And I realized I loved helping small, weird businesses grow. I just hated writing all the time. So I pivoted. I turned Quiet Growth into a boutique content strategy agency. Instead of writing, I started consulting. I helped businesses figure out what kind of content they needed, who to hire, what tools to use. I trained their teams, reviewed analytics, built systems. It worked. By early 2020, I had 5 retainer clients paying $2,000 per month each. Not massive money, but scalable, repeatable, and more strategic. I hired a VA, then a junior strategist. We were lean, remote, and efficient. Then COVID hit. 3 clients bailed. I lost 60% of revenue in 2 weeks. I cried, panicked, then decided to adapt. Again, I started hosting free webinars, content strategy for non-tech founders. Hundreds of people showed up. I offered a $49 mini course at the end. I made $2,400 the first week, then $4,000 the next. I realized info products could stabilize the business. So I leaned in. I created a $299 course on niche SEO content, then a $999 mastermind group. I only needed a few buyers a month to keep things afloat, and I got more than a few. By mid-2021, Quiet Growth was pulling in about $18,000 per month from a mix of consulting, courses, and client work. I wasn't working 12-hour days anymore. I was working maybe 6. I started mentoring other freelancers. I published a free guide called How to Make Your First $1,000 from Boring Content. It got 40K downloads. That turned into speaking gigs, podcasts, even a book deal, still in the works. Don't jinx it. Looking back, I think the thing that saved me wasn't my writing or marketing skills. It was my willingness to keep pivoting. I didn't have a 5-year plan. I just kept solving one problem at a time. Now, in 2025, Quiet Growth is a small but thriving agency with a team of 4. We serve 30-plus clients a year, and our revenue passed $400,000 last year. I still live pretty modestly. Same beat-up couch. Same coffee mug from 2016. But I work on my own terms. If you're reading this thinking, I could never start a business, I get it. I didn't think I could either. But if you can send an email, Google a question, and survive off ramen for a while, you can do a lot more than you think. You don't need to have the next big idea. Sometimes it's enough to do the boring stuff really, really well. I never set out to be an entrepreneur. Honestly, I used to roll my eyes at the word. It felt like one of those labels people gave themselves when they didn't want a boss, but had no plan. I was perfectly content with my job as a software engineer at a mid-sized fintech company in Chicago. It paid well, I liked my team, and the hours were reasonable. Then came the incident. One Tuesday afternoon, after 5 years at the company, I was called into a meeting with HR and my manager. I thought it was routine. Instead, I was handed a severance packet. Budget cuts. The department was being restructured. Just like that, I was unemployed. I spent the next 2 months on autopilot. Applied to dozens of jobs. Got a few interviews, but nothing stuck. The tech sector was wobbling, and I wasn't the only one out of work. Eventually, savings started to dry up. One night, over whiskey and despair, I vented to my best friend Alex about how hard it was to find meaningful, stable work in tech anymore. "You always help me with my small business stuff," Alex said. He ran a landscaping company and often came to me for help with digital tools. "What if you made tools for people like me? You built that inventory tracker in like a weekend. It saved us tons of time. I shrugged it off. I needed a job, not a hobby project. But the next morning, something clicked. I remembered how good it felt building that inventory tool for Alex. Simple, practical, and immediately useful. I started to research other problems small business owners had. Inventory, scheduling, invoicing, expense tracking. Most of them were paying for clunky, overpriced software with features they didn't need. So I picked one problem to solve: scheduling. Landscapers, cleaners, dog walkers, mobile mechanics, all of them relied on tight schedules to make their businesses work. If they missed an appointment or double-booked, they lost money and customers. I mocked up a minimalist scheduling app over the next 3 weeks. I worked out of my tiny kitchen in a rented apartment, surviving on ramen and $2 coffee. I called it Slotly. It let users create, edit, and share schedules with clients in seconds. No bloat. Just clean UX and core features. I sent it to Alex. He tried it for a week and texted me, "Dude, this is actually good." Encouraged, I cold emailed about 50 small service businesses in my city. A few replied. I offered free trials. 2 months later, I had a handful of regular users. Nothing fancy, but it was validation. I kept refining the app based on their feedback. A mechanic asked for photo uploads per job. A dog walker wanted recurring weekly slots. A mobile notary needed integration with Google Calendar. I added those features one by one. My code base grew, so did the bug list. But so did the users. I still had no money coming in, so I started freelancing on the side. Building Slotly became my night shift. Every hour I wasn't working for a freelance client went into the app. By the 8th month, I had 150 active users and started charging $8 per month. Not much, but enough to test pricing. Some balked, others paid happily. A few said they'd pay double if I added invoice generation. So I did. Revenue climbed to about $1,000 per month. Still below minimum wage, but steady. I started thinking, maybe this wasn't just a side project. Then came a crossroads. A recruiter reached out with a 6-figure engineering role at a big firm. Stable. Great benefits. After months of scraping by, it was incredibly tempting. I scheduled the interview. The night before, I stared at my screen for 2 hours. Slotly was open in another tab. I checked the dashboard. 223 users. Most had been active for over 3 months. A few had even emailed me to thank me for the app. That felt rare. I canceled the interview. The next day, I posted on Reddit under a throwaway and shared what I'd built. Solo dev here. I made a scheduling app for small service businesses. AMA. It blew up. Tons of feedback, questions, feature requests. A few developers even offered help. But more importantly, I got over 600 new signups in a week. I scrambled to scale my backend. My Firebase costs quadrupled overnight. But for the first time, it felt real. I redesigned the site. Introduced a freemium model. Added Stripe integration. I also started getting emails from niche industries, mobile massage therapists, at-home tutors, even traveling nurses. Apparently, everyone was tired of overcomplicated SaaS. A year after being laid off, Slotly hit $5,000 MRR. That's when investors started sniffing around. I got cold emails from angels, seed funds, accelerators. I wasn't sure what to do. I'd never run a business before. I still didn't have a proper LLC. But I also didn't want to give up control just yet. So I stalled. Instead, I hired a part-time contractor to help with front-end improvements. Then I started doing webinars for new users. Nothing fancy, just Zoom calls with Cande. I also reached out to local business associations and offered free workshops. Slotly was getting noticed, especially by non-tech folks who needed simple tools. By year 2, we hit $18,000 MRR. I moved out of the apartment and into a shared office space. The coffee was better. So was my mental health. I hired a second developer and a support rep. Now, we're approaching $30,000 MRR. Still small by startup standards, but enough to be profitable. I still own 100% of it. No outside funding, no debt. Just a product that works and solves a real problem. I've learned more in the last 3 years than I did in a decade of traditional employment. Not just about code, but about people. About patience, empathy, and how to listen. Running a business is messy, exhausting, and uncertain, but it's also deeply rewarding. I never thought I'd be here. I didn't chase a dream. I just kept solving problems for people who needed help. Sometimes that's all it takes. I started my business with 2 things, a broken laptop and desperation. It was 2018, and I had just been laid off from a sales job at a mid-sized logistics company. I wasn't particularly good at the job, and to be honest, I didn't love it. What really messed with my head, though, was that I thought I had time to figure things out, to slowly build something on the side, to take a couple more safe jobs. But losing the job killed all of that illusion. I had rent due in 2 weeks, a car payment, and about $417 in my checking account. I wish I could say I had this genius idea that changed everything. But what actually happened was a lot messier and way less inspirational. I started scrolling freelance platforms like Upwork and Fiverr out of panic. I knew I could write. I'd done a lot of sales email copy, scripts for cold calling, and I was decent with words. So I set up a few gig listings, offering to write product descriptions and emails for e-commerce stores. That first month, I made $278. That wouldn't even cover my rent, but it was the first time I had ever made money without having a boss. It felt surreal. I doubled down. I wrote for anyone who would pay me $5 emails, $10 bios, $15 Amazon product blurbs. I lived on coffee and instant noodles, and I worked 12-hour days trying to build up reviews. After about 4 months, I was pulling in $1,500 per month. Still not enough, but I could breathe a little. Then I got a message that changed everything. A Shopify store owner in LA needed someone to rewrite their entire product catalog, 300 plus products. I quoted them $1,200, expecting them to laugh. They said yes, paid 50% upfront. That was my first real taste of scale. By the end of that year, I was doing around $3,000 per month in freelance income. I moved into a cheaper apartment and took on more long-term clients. I wasn't rich by any stretch, but I was surviving, and more importantly, I was free. But here's where things really started to take off. One of my regular clients ran a pet accessory brand and casually mentioned how he struggled to manage his email marketing. I offered to take a look at his Klaviyo flows. I'd never done it before, but I figured how different could it be from writing cold emails? Turns out, it was very different, but I also realized I loved it. Writing copy was one thing, but writing automated flows that made people money felt like cheating the system. I studied every YouTube tutorial, read every Klaviyo help doc, and reverse engineered the best flows I could find. I built his abandoned cart and welcome series. His sales jumped 28% in 2 weeks. He gave me a $200 bonus and a referral to another brand. That brand paid me $750 to do something similar. Then another, and another. Fast forward 18 months, I wasn't a copywriter anymore. I was a one-man email marketing agency. I rebranded everything, started calling myself Retention Partners, yeah, corny, I know, and began positioning myself as a high-end Klaviyo expert for DTC brands doing $1 million plus in revenue. I raised my prices. $1,500 per project became $3,000, then $5,000. I started getting on calls instead of just messaging through Upwork. I built proposal decks. I learned how to pitch. By the end of 2020, I had made $138,000 that year, more than any job had ever paid me. But I hit a wall. I was booked out for months, working 60-hour weeks, and my body started breaking down. I couldn't scale myself any further. So, I did what scared me most. I hired someone, a junior copywriter from Twitter who'd been DMing me for months, asking for advice. I trained her for a few weeks, and she started handling overflow. Then I hired another. Soon, I had a small team of 4 contractors, 2 copywriters, a designer, and a Klaviyo tech. I became more of a creative director and strategist. In 2021, I did $412,000 in revenue. I was running a legit micro agency, but I still wasn't sure where to go with it. I had no vision past, don't go broke. Then an old client introduced me to someone who changed the game. He ran a CPG brand and had just exited. He wanted to start an agency and was looking for a co-founder. We clicked. Same vibe, same grind, complementary skill sets. He knew systems, operations, growth. I knew service delivery and client relationships. We launched an agency together in early 2022, focused on retention marketing for subscription brands. I brought over my clients. He brought capital and operational structure. We scaled fast. We went from 3 to 12 team members in 6 months. Monthly recurring revenue jumped from $20,000 to $70,000. By the end of 2022, we crossed $1 million in total revenue. That was the year I officially stopped doing client work. I was running the company now. Hiring, vision, team development, sales strategy. It felt weird at first, letting go of the thing that got me here. But it was the only way to grow. 2023 came with its own chaos, layoffs in tech, tightening at budgets, brands struggling to survive. We felt the pressure. We lost a few big clients, had to cut back some team hours. But we adapted. We started offering fractional retention consulting, helped brands fix their LTV issues, even outside email. We ended 2023 at $1.7 million in revenue with a leaner, smarter team of 9. I took home more than I ever imagined, but honestly, the money wasn't the biggest win. The win was waking up knowing I owned my time, that no one could fire me, that I built this. Now it's 2025. I'm writing this from a co-working spot in Lisbon. I work maybe 20 to 25 hours a week. I'm experimenting with new offers, thinking about launching a cohort-based course. The agency still runs, but now with a managing director. I've stepped back from the day-to-day. I don't pretend this is easy. There were months I wanted to quit. Clients ghosted. Payments got delayed. I got burned by contractors. I missed birthdays, skipped sleep, and sacrificed a lot to get here. But every hard day was worth it. Because there is nothing, nothing, like building something from scratch that's yours. If you're reading this and still in the early days, keep going. Every $5 gig, every awkward sales call, every late night, it adds up. You don't need a genius idea. You need a problem you can solve, a willingness to be wrong, and the guts to stay in the game. That's it. You stay in the game long enough, you win. I'm 35 now. 4 years ago, I was dead broke, unemployed, sleeping on a friend's couch with a hard drive full of half-baked ideas and an email inbox filled with rejection letters. Last week, I sold my company for just under $9 million. I still haven't really processed it, but I'm writing this now because I spent way too long thinking I was a failure, when in fact, I just hadn't figured out how to fail correctly. So here's the story. I was working in enterprise IT until 2018, doing automation scripts and back-end maintenance for a consulting firm in Chicago. I wasn't passionate about it, but it paid decent and I liked the team. Then I got laid off when the company merged. I took it personally, spiraled hard, and didn't work again for 10 months. I drained my savings trying to figure out the next big idea, while rejecting every job offer I got because I thought they were beneath me. That was my first big entrepreneurial mistake, thinking I had to go straight from employee to Elon Musk in one leap. I wanted a billion-dollar startup, not a freelance gig or a boring SaaS tool. I ignored good ideas because they weren't sexy. In mid-2019, I moved in with a college buddy in Indianapolis. I started driving Uber and doing part-time IT fixes for small businesses, just to afford food and not wear out my welcome. One night, while fixing a screwed-up PS system for a small family-owned pizza chain, I noticed something. The owner was using 3 different platforms to manage inventory, employee schedules, and online orders. None of them talked to each other. The guy looked completely exhausted. I asked him why he didn't just use Toast or Square, and he said, "Tried them. Too complicated. Too expensive. My cousin set this up. I just live with it." That was my light bulb moment. Not the billion-dollar, world-changing idea I wanted, but an idea that solved a real problem for a real person. I went home and spent 3 days building a very ugly prototype that basically pulled CSV exports from those platforms and combined them into a dashboard. Sent it to him for free. He started using it. Then he asked if it could alert him when he was low on cheese. I hacked that in 2. He told his friend who owned a bar. Then another guy who ran a food truck. By February 2020, I had 12 people using it and paying me between $10 and $30 per month via PayPal. It was still duct-taped code, but it worked. I called it Snackline. Don't ask me why. I still hate the name. My friend's cousin helped me redesign the UI for cheap. I threw together a simple website, added Stripe, and made a real sign-up process. Then March 2020 hit. COVID shut everything down. Almost all my users disappeared in a week. Every small restaurant and food truck paused or closed. I nearly quit. I went back to Uber. I watched the numbers fall off a cliff. But weirdly enough, in May 2020, I got an email from a ghost kitchen operator. He said he saw a Snackline mentioned in some local Facebook group and wanted to use it to manage 5 locations. I onboarded him personally. Then one of his suppliers wanted access to view inventory levels directly. I added that feature. Then someone else emailed saying they ran a 12-location coffee chain and had the same issue. By the end of 2020, I was back to 30 paying clients, only now they were larger. In 2021, I applied to a niche accelerator focused on food tech. Got rejected. I tried again with a local Indiana startup incubator. They gave me a $25,000 grant and workspace. That was when I stopped thinking of myself as a failed entrepreneur and started acting like a scrappy one. I hired a junior dev and a part-time support rep. We rebuilt the back end, rebranded the product as Supply Pilot, and focused exclusively on mid-sized chains that had outgrown spreadsheets but weren't big enough for Oracle or SAP. Our pitch became, you don't need an enterprise solution. You need a smart one. By Q4 2021, we were doing $9,000 MRR. In 2022, we hit $35,000. I paid myself a real salary for the first time since 2018. I spent that whole year driving to meet clients. I'd fly to St. Louis for a demo, stay in a Motel 6, buy the manager lunch, and close the deal. We didn't do digital marketing. No SEO, just referrals and personal hustle. But it worked. We grew slowly and profitably. No VC, no dilution, no crazy burn. In 2023, a supply chain SaaS firm based in Toronto reached out about strategic partnership opportunities. That was code for, we want to buy you. I ignored them at first. I didn't think we were ready. They came back 6 months later, after we passed $50,000 MRR, with a real offer, $5.2 million. I said no. We were just getting started. I wanted to grow it to $100,000 MRR and see what was possible. Then I got hit by a car in December 2023. It wasn't fatal, but it shook me up. I was in the hospital for 9 days and couldn't walk for almost 2 months. During that time, my team kept things running, but I realized how fragile everything was. If I couldn't work, we stalled. That's when I started thinking about selling again. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. I met with a few other acquirers, and one made a better offer, $8.7 million, with a 70/30th split, cash upfront, and earnout over 18 months. I negotiated hard, brought in a lawyer and a part-time CFO to help with due diligence. We closed in March 2024. My share after taxes and bonuses to my tiny team? About $5.4 million. I gave $100,000 to the buddy who let me sleep on his couch. I still work with the acquiring company part-time as a product advisor, but mostly I'm taking time off, learning to fly, and trying to figure out what I want to build next. Probably something in the food ops space again, because I know it, I like it, and it doesn't need to be glamorous to be useful. Here's what I wish I knew in 2018. 1. Don't chase disruption, chase usefulness. 2. Unscalable things like talking to users, manually onboarding, and hand-coding features are how you get traction early. 3. Sexy doesn't mean successful. Spreadsheets that save time are worth more than AI that does nothing. 4. Most people fail not because the idea is bad, but because they quit too soon or tried to grow too fast. 5. Modest wins compound. My first customer paid $10. My last paid $2,400 per month. And yeah, I never did become a unicorn founder. But I paid off my parents' mortgage, I'm not scared of bills anymore, and I finally feel like I earned the title of entrepreneur. If you're building something right now, and it feels small or dumb, good. That's where the magic starts. About 4 years ago, I was one of those people who rolled my eyes at phrases like, follow your passion, or build your dream, not someone else's. I didn't think those things were wrong, just cheesy. I worked in corporate finance, hated my job about 60% of the time, tolerated it the other 40%, and figured that was just life. Work is work. I had a decent salary, I could afford nice things, and I told myself that was enough. Then, a Tuesday morning happened. It was raining, I was running late, my subway stalled between stops, and I got to the office 10 minutes late to a passive-aggressive Slack message from my boss. Morning. We do start at 8:30, right? Something about the pettiness of it just snapped me. I spent that entire day Googling side hustles, business ideas, anything to get out. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I was suddenly desperate to not be sitting at that desk by the time I turned 30. The idea didn't come all at once. It started with my dog. I have a rescue pit bull named Kaya, and she's basically my emotional support animal, though not officially. When I'd come home from those soul-sucking days, Kaya would meet me at the door, tail wagging, just happy I was home. That dog got me through some dark stretches. One night, I was browsing dog toys online, and I couldn't help but notice that most of them looked the same. Plastic squeaky stuff, rope, the usual chew toys. I thought, why isn't there something better out there? Like, Dog toys that are more sustainable, interesting, made with intention? I didn't even realize at the time that I just asked the most important question an entrepreneur can ask. Within a week, I was up at 1 a.m. sketching out ideas for a dog toy subscription box that would focus on eco-friendly materials and enrichment-based play. Think puzzle toys, natural rubber chews, and handmade accessories. I wasn't a product designer or a supply chain expert. I was a financial analyst. But I knew dogs. I knew Kaya. And I knew there had to be more people like me out there who would pay extra for something better than a squeaky plastic bone made in a mystery factory overseas. I called it Wild Paws Club. It started small. I used $3,000 of my savings to order prototypes off Alibaba and test materials from small U.S. suppliers. I learned everything from scratch: logistics, warehousing, how to build a Shopify store, how to run Facebook ads. My first logo was made in Canva. I spent 2 hours choosing a font. Total amateur hour. I launched in May 2021 with a goal of getting 50 subscribers in the first 3 months. I had no email list, no marketing team, just an Instagram account and a photo of Kaya wearing a branded bandana. In 3 months, I had 14 subscribers. Half were friends. 2 were my aunts. It was humbling. But here's the part that makes or breaks people. I didn't quit. Instead, I got obsessed. I started emailing every single customer asking for feedback. Why did you sign up? What did you like? What didn't you like? Most of the responses were kind but lukewarm. The toys were cute. The packaging was nice. It was all just okay. And that wasn't good enough. So I spent the next 6 months optimizing everything. I sourced new materials from a woman-owned supplier in Oregon. I swapped out the packaging for biodegradable mailers. I added little personal touches, handwritten notes, dog treat recipes, personalized tags with the dog's name. And then something unexpected happened. People started sharing their boxes on TikTok. One of my customers, a college student with a golden retriever named Muffin, posted an unboxing video with the caption, "Muffin's monthly present is here." It got 280,000 views in 2 days. I got 200 new subscribers that week alone. That was the moment I felt something shift. Suddenly, I was waking up to Shopify alerts in the middle of the night. I was answering customer service emails during meetings at work. I was working 18-hour days, and I didn't even mind. Kaya was practically my co-founder, sleeping next to me while I packed boxes on my apartment floor. By December 2021, I had 600 active subscribers. I was doing around $20,000 in monthly revenue. I reinvested every dollar. My apartment looked like a warehouse: tape guns, shipping labels, rolls of jute rope, bins of toys. I was still working my 9 to 5, but mentally I had already quit. In March 2022, I finally did it. I quit my job. No backup plan. No second income. Just belief and 600 dog parents who thought I was onto something. The next year was chaos. Good chaos. I hired my first employee, a friend from college. I moved fulfillment to a 3PL in New Jersey. I launched themed boxes, campfire pups, Barkfest in Paris, mystery Poslands. People loved them. I introduced a referral program that exploded. One customer referred 34 people. I started seeing dogs with Wild Paws toys in local parks and almost cried. By summer 2023, we hit 5,000 active subscribers and crossed $1 million in revenue. I paid myself a real salary for the first time in 2 years. I took my parents on a trip to Italy. I paid off my student loans. I donated $10,000 to the rescue where I found Kaya. The weirdest part? The business kept growing even when I stopped micromanaging every detail. I built systems, hired smart people, trusted my gut when it came to brand decisions. We added a monthly give-back initiative where we donate a portion of profits to a different dog rescue each month. It's my favorite part of the business now. Today, Wild Paws Club is at around 11,000 monthly subscribers. We just launched our own line of dog treats and enrichment puzzles made from recycled wood and non-toxic paint. We have partnerships with 3 shelters and a few indie pet stores. It's still surreal. And Kaya? She's 9 now, slowing down a little. But she still greets me at the door, tail wagging. She has no idea she's the reason I got my life back. Or maybe she does. Dogs are smarter than we think. Here's what I've learned. You don't have to be an expert to start. You just have to care more than other people do. About your product, your customers, your mission. If you care enough to keep going when it sucks, when no one's buying, when you're tired and broke and confused, then you've already beaten 90% of people. The cheesy advice I used to roll my eyes at? It's all true. Follow your passion. Build your dream. Your future self will thank you. I used to be one of those people who hated my job, but stayed because it paid okay and had decent benefits. You know the type. Monday morning dread, counting down the minutes until lunch, coasting just enough not to get fired. I was working in logistics for a mid-sized company, optimizing routes for delivery trucks. It was spreadsheets, emails, and passive-aggressive managers all day. But the story isn't about the job I hated. It's about the freak accident that turned my hobby into a company. It started with pickles. Yeah, actual literal pickles. See, my grandfather was from Poland, and every summer when I was a kid, he'd pickle cucumbers, beets, carrots, whatever he could find. He had this little cellar in the back of his house that always smelled like garlic and dill. I didn't care much for them then, but after he passed away, I got a little nostalgic and tried making a batch on my own. That was 2 years ago. By the time I was making pickles regularly, I was giving them away to co-workers in mason jars, mostly to get feedback. Then, one of the sales reps at my job, we'll call him Matt, offered to pay for a few jars to take to his family barbecue. I said sure, charged him $10 a jar just to cover my time and ingredients, and forgot about it. A week later, he came back and said his uncle, who ran a local deli, wanted to buy some for the shop. Now, I'm no fool. I knew food laws were strict, and I couldn't just sell homemade stuff without jumping through a bunch of hoops. But I was curious. I emailed the health department, looked up cottage food laws in my state, and realized that selling pickles was legal if I labeled everything clearly and took a food safety course. I spent $75 on the course, printed out some simple labels on my inkjet printer, and officially became a very tiny, very part-time business. Deal with it, pickles. The first few months were slow. I'd make pickles on Saturdays, deliver them on Sundays, and go back to spreadsheets on Mondays. My girlfriend thought it was cute. My boss rolled his eyes when he found out. But Matt kept ordering, and soon a few more local delis started carrying my jars. I wasn't making much, maybe $200 a month in profit, but something about it felt mine. Then came the Instagram post. A local food blogger, one of those people who reviews obscure eats in the city, came across a jar of my spicy garlic pickles at a farmer's market and raved about them. The post got shared over 3,000 times, and I went from 400 followers to 9,000 in a week. I had no website, no way to ship, no online store. I was still slapping Avery labels on old jars. I called in sick to work that Monday and spent the whole day learning how to set up Shopify. I slapped together a basic storefront, figured out how to ship with USPS, and added a limited batch option since I could only produce like 40 jars a week out of my kitchen. Every single jar sold out in 48 hours. I had customers from states I'd never even been to. That was the first time I considered quitting my job. But I didn't. Not yet. I took a week of PTO, borrowed my friend's commercial kitchen space after hours, and tested scaling up my process. Instead of small mason jars, I ordered proper quart containers. I invested in a vacuum sealer, upgraded my knives, and hired my cousin to help with prep. Soon, I was moving over 200 jars a week, and I hit $5,000 in monthly revenue. I built a wait list because I couldn't keep up with demand. Pickle memes started floating around with my logo on them. My inbox was flooded with requests from boutique stores, subscription boxes, even a meal kit company. Then came the real problem. I was still working full-time, and it was killing me. I'd work 9 to 5 in logistics, come home, and prep pickles from 6 p.m. to midnight. Weekends were full production days. My relationship was straining. My sleep schedule was trash. I had to choose. So one night, I sat down with a bottle of whiskey and did the math. If I quit and focused on the business full-time, I could double production. My monthly burn rate, rent, bills, kitchen rental, supplies, was about $3,200. If I sold 500 jars at $12 each, I'd make $6,000 a month. It was close, but possible. I didn't need to be rich, just sustainable. The next day, I handed in my resignation. The first 3 months were terrifying. I had days where orders dropped unexpectedly, jars cracked in shipping, and once a whole batch turned moldy because I didn't sterilize the lids properly. But I learned. I tightened up my process. I outsourced label design. I hired a part-time kitchen assistant. Then, during the holiday season, I had my first viral hit, the pickle advent calendar. It was stupid. It was excessive. It was brilliant. 24 mini jars with different flavors, sriracha lime, cinnamon beet, smoky dill, bourbon pickle chips, you name it. I only made 200 to test the waters. They sold out in 3 days at $85 a piece. I made $17,000 that month. After that, I got serious. I registered as an LLC, found a shared commercial kitchen that gave me access 24/7, and brought on a friend to help manage logistics. Ironic, right? I negotiated better rates with my jar supplier, found a co-packer for certain batches, and rebranded completely. Fast forward to now, 2 years later, and Deal With It is in 30 stores across 12 states. We have a small team of 5. I'm finally paying myself a decent salary, and we're testing out a pickle subscription box model. We've also partnered with a few breweries for limited edition brine collabs. We just landed our first regional grocery chain deal. I still remember the taste of that first jar I made. The cucumbers were too soft, and I forgot to add mustard seeds. I didn't know what I was doing, but I just kept tweaking, listening, testing, improving. People think entrepreneurship is a leap of faith. It's not. It's more like running into the ocean one step at a time, trying not to trip, and suddenly realizing you're swimming. I never thought I'd say this, but pickles changed my life. Hey, friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. I've always been a firm believer in the idea that success doesn't come overnight. It's a mix of hard work, failure, and the ability to adapt to new circumstances. But for me, the journey to becoming an entrepreneur started in a way that I never imagined. It all began with a failed business idea back in 2014. At the time, I was in my late 20s, working a regular 9-to-5 job in a corporate office. I had a decent salary, benefits, and the typical things that come with a stable job, but I wasn't happy. I wanted to create something that was mine. I had dreams of running my own business, but I didn't know what or how. Then, the idea hit me. I had always been fascinated with health and wellness. From fitness to nutrition, I'd spent years learning about different diets, workout routines, and natural supplements. I decided to create a line of health supplements, convinced that I could make something that would both help people and be a profitable business. I threw everything I had into the project: time, money, and energy. I hired a team, created a brand, and even invested in a factory to manufacture the supplements. The product was designed to improve mental clarity and focus, something I thought was missing in the current market. But things didn't go as planned. The first batch of supplements didn't sell as expected. In fact, sales were dismal. I remember staring at the first set of reports and seeing numbers that made my stomach drop. I spent months working on this, and yet, no one seemed interested. After several months of trying to push the product in every direction I could think of, online ads, influencers, local stores, nothing worked. I had no experience in marketing or sales, and I didn't understand how to scale the business. I was putting in hours of work, but I was chasing my own tail. By the end of that year, the business had cost me almost everything I had saved. The money, the time, the relationships, it was all gone. But it wasn't just the financial loss that hurt. It was the hit to my confidence. I felt like I had failed in the most public way possible. I had told friends and family that I was going to create something amazing, and I had to face them with the news that it all came crashing down. I was embarrassed and frustrated, but at the same time, I learned something valuable. Failure was a teacher. It forced me to reflect on what I had done wrong and what I needed to do differently. That was the first pivotal moment in my journey. In 2015, I decided to try again, but this time, I would do it differently. I had learned the hard way that having a good product wasn't enough. There were deeper layers to building a business: marketing, understanding your target audience, scaling at the right pace. This time, I took a more methodical approach. I also decided that if I was going to fail again, I wanted to fail with knowledge and data backing my decisions. I spent the next year working full-time at my day job while building a new business on the side. This time, I decided to enter the world of digital marketing. I didn't have much capital left after my failed venture, so I started with nothing but a laptop and a passion for learning. I researched every possible aspect of online marketing, search engine optimization, SEO, social media strategies, email campaigns, everything. I also started experimenting with freelance work, offering my services to small businesses in need of digital marketing help. It wasn't glamorous. I took on small projects, sometimes working for less than what I was worth just to build my reputation and portfolio. But as I started to gain more clients and understand the nuances of digital marketing, I could feel the difference from before. I was learning the ropes, gaining real-world experience, and slowly building something solid. By 2016, I decided to go full-time into my new business. I left my corporate job, which, to be honest, was one of the most terrifying decisions I've ever made. I had no safety net anymore. It was just me, my laptop, and the desire to succeed. This time, I focused on helping small to medium-sized businesses grow through better marketing strategies. I was working around the clock, and I started seeing results. Slowly but surely, clients started referring me to others, and my business began to grow. I expanded my services, and instead of being a one-person operation, I hired my first employee, a freelance graphic designer who could help me with visual content. I also hired a project manager to help keep everything on track. I went from working in isolation to building a small team of like-minded individuals. The business was starting to generate enough income for me to pay my bills and invest back into the company. But just as things were picking up, I faced a massive challenge that almost broke me. In early 2018, I lost my biggest client. They had been with me for over a year and accounted for a large portion of my revenue. Without warning, they pulled the plug on our contract due to budget cuts. It felt like everything I had worked for could crumble in an instant. I was back to square one. It took weeks for me to regain my footing. I didn't give up, though. Instead, I leaned into my network of contacts and clients and doubled down on my marketing efforts. I used everything I had learned over the years to drum up new business. I knew I needed to focus on relationships and customer retention. By mid-2018, I had replaced the lost revenue and was starting to bring in new clients at a faster pace. I also diversified my offerings, adding paid advertising services to complement the SEO and content marketing I was already doing. By 2019, my business had reached a level I had never thought possible. It was stable, growing steadily, and generating consistent revenue. But that wasn't enough. I wanted to build something truly impactful, something that could change not only my life but the lives of my employees and clients. I reinvested in the business by creating an online course to teach entrepreneurs how to market their businesses effectively. I also launched a podcast where I interviewed industry leaders and shared my journey. Fast forward to 2025, and I'm now running a multi-six-figure marketing agency with a growing team. We work with clients across various industries, from tech startups to established e-commerce brands. I've learned a lot along the way about what it takes to run a business. But one of the most important things I've learned is that success isn't about avoiding failure. It's about being willing to fail, learn from it, and adapt. Looking back, I can see how the failures and setbacks shaped me into the entrepreneur I am today. My first business didn't work, but it taught me resilience. Losing my biggest client in 2018 nearly broke me, but it also taught me the importance of being adaptable and building relationships. Now, I know that failure isn't the end. It's just part of the process. The key is to keep going, keep learning, and keep pushing forward. If you're just starting out or feeling discouraged by setbacks, know this: the road to success isn't linear. There will be bumps, detours, and failures along the way, but that's what makes the journey worth it. The most important thing is to keep moving forward, even when things feel impossible. If you keep at it long enough, success will come. You just have to be willing to put in the work. I've always believed that entrepreneurship is like a game of survival. It's not about how many times you win, but how many times you manage to get back up after you fall. My story isn't some overnight success. It's more about tenacity, figuring things out as I went, and never, ever giving up. So here goes. This is the story of how I went from being $20,000 in debt to building a business worth over $10 million. Let me take you back to the beginning. I grew up in a modest home with parents who worked hard but barely made ends meet. My dad was a mechanic, and my mom worked as a secretary. We weren't poor, but we didn't have much either. They always made sure I had what I needed, but they also made sure to teach me the value of hard work. I think that's where my drive to create something for myself started. I always knew I didn't want to live paycheck to paycheck like them. After high school, I didn't have the grades for a scholarship, so I went to a local community college and studied business. I wasn't the smartest person in class, but I had something that a lot of people didn't: grit. I hustled hard. I worked a part-time job at a retail store, sold stuff online, and even learned how to design websites for local businesses to make extra cash. One thing led to another, and I eventually managed to save up enough to start my first business, an e-commerce store selling custom phone accessories. At first, everything went great. I built a website, set up some social media accounts, and found a supplier who could deliver high-quality phone cases. I started small, investing maybe $1,000 in inventory and marketing. But within the first few months, I hit a huge roadblock: inventory issues. My supplier kept delaying shipments, and I started losing customers. I thought I could just pivot to a new supplier, but the damage had been done. My reputation was shot, and I was left with a pile of unsold products. By the end of the year, I had only made about $5,000 in profit, and I had already spent more than that trying to fix the problems. I was devastated. I had put everything into this business, and it felt like I was failing hard. I ended up taking a loan from a family member to pay off some of the debt, and I spent the next few months trying to figure out what went wrong. It wasn't just the supplier. I was spread too thin, trying to handle everything on my own. I needed to learn how to scale. So I decided to take a step back and rework my entire business plan. I did a lot of research, talked to mentors, and spent hours reading about other entrepreneurs who had failed and gotten back up. One thing kept coming up: build systems. If you want a business to succeed, it's all about building efficient systems and automating where possible. That was my first major breakthrough. I started implementing systems into my e-commerce business. I outsourced customer service, hired a VA to manage my social media, and used automation tools for inventory and order management. Fast forward a few months, and things started picking up. With the new systems in place, my business became far more streamlined. I also diversified my offerings, adding more products that were in demand, like wireless chargers and smartwatches. But the turning point came when I decided to pivot to a subscription-based model. Instead of just selling individual products, I offered a monthly subscription box with curated accessories and exclusive items. It was a gamble, but it paid off. By the time I reached my second year, my monthly revenue had grown by over 400%. I was no longer just a small e-commerce store. I had built a community. My customers loved the subscription model, and I loved the steady cash flow. The subscriptions kept coming in, and I could plan ahead. I was no longer stressed out about inventory or customer service. I had hired a small team, and I was able to focus on growing the business instead of just trying to keep it alive. As the business grew, I reinvested everything back into the company. I paid off my debt, hired more employees, and started focusing on scaling. I invested in paid ads, influencer partnerships, and expanding to other platforms like Amazon and Shopify. In 2018, I launched an upgraded version of my subscription box, this time offering high-end accessories for tech enthusiasts. The response was insane. I made more in the first month than I had in the first 6 months of 2017. But as anyone who's ever built a business knows, the growth didn't come without challenges. In 2019, I faced a major issue with supply chain disruptions. This time, I had prepared better. I had multiple suppliers and manufacturers in different countries, which allowed me to pivot quickly and maintain stock levels. While many other e-commerce businesses were struggling to fulfill orders, my company thrived because of the flexibility I had built into the model. In 2020, the pandemic hit, and that was another huge test. With retail stores closing, more people were shopping online than ever before. But the competition was fierce. I had to double down on digital marketing and refine my product offerings to stand out. I introduced new products like personalized tech gear and eco-friendly accessories, which became a huge hit. The demand was overwhelming, and by the end of the year, we had scaled to a point where we were shipping out thousands of orders every single day. 2021 was when things really took off. I brought in investors, scaled our product line even further, and expanded internationally. We became a 7-figure business. I knew I had finally made it, but it wasn't just about the money. It was about proving to myself that I could turn a failed venture into something meaningful. Looking back, it wasn't easy, and there were moments when I wanted to quit. But every time I hit a wall, I found a way around it. I learned that success in entrepreneurship isn't about avoiding failure. It's about learning from it and using those lessons to build something stronger. Today, my business is valued at over $10 million, and we're continuing to grow. We've expanded into new markets, launched our own line of products, and established a strong brand presence. I've also been able to give back to the community by mentoring aspiring entrepreneurs and supporting small businesses. If there's one piece of advice I could give to anyone thinking about starting their own business, it's this: don't let failure define you. Embrace it, learn from it, and keep pushing forward. Because in the end, it's not about how many times you fall, it's about how many times you get back up. I've learned that firsthand, and I wouldn't trade my journey for anything. The first time I thought about starting a business, I was sitting on the floor of my tiny apartment in a city I had just moved to. I had barely enough money to pay my rent, let alone think about building something from scratch. I was 24, freshly out of college, and struggling to find my footing. The idea came to me when I was scrolling through my phone, reading about a small company that had made millions by offering a unique product. It seemed so simple, so doable. The thought crossed my mind, why not me? At the time, I had no money to invest, no experience, and not even a clear business idea. But I had something that would become more important than anything else: drive. I didn't know it yet, but that drive was going to be my secret weapon. I had been working as a barista at a local coffee shop, making barely enough to pay my bills. Every morning, I would open my laptop, sip on my overpriced coffee, and dream of something more. I had this idea rattling around in my head about creating an online business, a platform where people could buy unique, handmade items from local artisans. I had no experience in e-commerce, marketing, or even website design, but I knew two things. There was a market for handmade, one-of-a-kind products, and I had a strong desire to create something that would allow me to leave behind the 9-to-5 grind. I spent the next few months diving into the world of entrepreneurship. I devoured books, took online courses, and listened to countless podcasts on the subject. I learned about product sourcing, how to create a business plan, how to optimize websites for conversions. It wasn't glamorous. There were countless late nights where I felt overwhelmed by the mountain of information I had to process. But little by little, I began to understand the building blocks of starting a business. The next step was figuring out how to get the capital to launch. I didn't have any rich relatives, and the idea of going to a bank for a loan seemed like a pipe dream. Instead, I turned to crowdfunding. I spent days crafting the perfect pitch for my idea and launched a campaign on Kickstarter. I was nervous, terrified even, that no one would care about my project. But to my surprise, the campaign took off. Within weeks, I had raised enough money to cover the initial cost of setting up my website and sourcing products. It wasn't a huge sum, but it was enough to get started. With the funds in place, I set about creating my website. I knew nothing about web design, so I used a drag-and-drop website builder to put together something basic. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. I started reaching out to artisans, convincing them to sell their products through my platform. I remember one of my first vendors, an elderly woman who made hand-carved wooden spoons. She was skeptical at first, but agreed to give it a shot. I was over the moon. My first product. The launch was an exciting blur. I spent hours posting on social media, contacting bloggers, and emailing influencers, trying to get the word out. Sales trickled in, and while they weren't huge, I felt a sense of accomplishment that I hadn't felt in a long time. It was a start. As the months went by, I learned that running a business wasn't as simple as I had imagined. There were constant challenges, inventory problems, delayed shipments, website crashes, and customer service complaints. There were days when I wanted to throw in the towel and go back to my stable coffee shop job, but something inside me kept pushing me forward. I couldn't go back to that life of uncertainty and boredom. I had to make this work. One of the biggest hurdles I faced was marketing. I didn't have a big budget for ads, so I had to get creative. I started posting about my journey on social media, sharing the ups and downs of building a business. I created a blog to feature the stories of the artisans who sold their products on my platform. Slowly but surely, people began to take notice. Sales started to pick up, and the community around my brand grew. The turning point came when I made my first major sale to a boutique store in a nearby city. It wasn't a huge order, but it was validation. Someone else believed in my product. The boutique started to feature some of our handmade items, and customers began visiting our online store. My website traffic skyrocketed, and so did my sales. It wasn't an overnight success, but it felt like I was finally gaining momentum. I also made the decision to focus on customer experience. I started offering personalized packaging, handwritten thank you notes, and exceptional customer service. This small attention to detail set me apart from the competition and helped to build a loyal customer base. Customers weren't just buying products, they were buying into the story, the craftsmanship, and the authenticity of what I was doing. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were still many nights where I lay awake stressing about how I was going to meet payroll or keep up with the demands of my growing business. The financial pressure was intense, and I had to make tough decisions. I started hiring help, First a part-time assistant to handle customer service, then a social media manager to help me grow the brand. As the business expanded, I realized I couldn't do it all myself. Letting go of some control was difficult, but it allowed me to focus on the bigger picture. As the years passed, my small business turned into a thriving online marketplace for handmade goods. We grew our product offerings, expanded our team, and started collaborating with even more artisans from around the world. Looking back, it still blows my mind that something I started from scratch in a small apartment with no money or experience became a multi-million-dollar company. What I've learned from this journey is that success isn't just about having a great idea. It's about persistence, adaptability, and learning from your mistakes. There were so many times I wanted to quit, but I kept pushing forward. And while I've achieved more than I ever imagined, I know that the journey is far from over. Every day is an opportunity to grow, improve, and innovate. Today, I'm no longer a barista. I'm a business owner, and while the challenges never stop, neither do the rewards. The best part of all this? It's not just about the money. It's about the community I've built, the artisans I've helped, and the impact we've made. If you're out there reading this, wondering if you can make it, let me tell you this. If I can do it, you can too. It's going to be hard. It's going to test you. But if you stay the course, you will be amazed at what you can achieve. I've always considered myself an unlikely entrepreneur. Growing up in a small town, my family didn't have much. My parents worked hard. My dad was a mechanic, and my mom was a waitress at a local diner. They provided for us as best as they could, but it was clear from a young age that their dreams of success were never going to go beyond making ends meet. I've always been determined not to let that be my future. At 22, I found myself living in a dingy apartment in the city, working a low-paying job at a call center. I had dropped out of college a year earlier, feeling lost in the traditional educational system. I couldn't see a future for myself in an office job. I needed something more, but I had no idea what that something was. I wasn't one of those people who had a clear passion or a unique skill. All I knew was that I didn't want to end up stuck in a rut like so many people I knew. It all started when I stumbled across an old hobby of mine, photography. When I was younger, I loved taking photos. I wasn't a pro by any means, but I had a decent eye for it. Over the years, I'd abandoned photography, but as I was scrolling through Instagram one day, I saw that people were actually making money from it. Influencers, brands, even regular people were getting paid to create content. It seemed like a dream come true, doing something you loved and actually making a living from it. I decided to give it a shot. I didn't have much to work with, just a basic camera and a lot of time on my hands. I started posting my photos on Instagram, hoping to gain a following. The first few months were discouraging. My photos weren't getting much attention, and the likes were few and far between. But I kept at it, posting every day and learning new techniques. I took free photography gigs for friends and family, gradually building a portfolio. One day, I got a message from a local boutique. They were looking for someone to take photos of their new clothing line for their website and social media. The pay wasn't great, but it was a start. I took the job, spent the day photographing the clothes, and delivered the photos the next week. They were thrilled with the results and asked if I'd be interested in doing more work for them. That was the moment things started to click. I knew I couldn't rely on one small gig to make a living, so I started reaching out to more businesses. I sent emails, slid into DMs, and called every small business in my city that might need a photographer. It was tedious, and I faced a lot of rejection, but I was persistent. Slowly, I started landing more clients. I was shooting everything, from events and product photos to headshots for small business owners. Every time I finished a project, I would use the money to reinvest in my business, buying better equipment, paying for courses to improve my skills, and eventually launching a website. At one point, I was working 18-hour days, balancing multiple gigs at once. I was burning out, but I was also seeing progress. I had saved up enough to buy a professional camera, something I could barely afford at the time, but I knew it was crucial if I wanted to compete with the more established photographers. That purchase was the turning point. The quality of my work improved, and more clients started reaching out to me. The money was still tight, but I could see the potential to turn this into something bigger. Then, I had an idea. I'd been seeing a growing trend of influencers collaborating with photographers for content. I realized that I could leverage my photography business and work with influencers to create social media content for brands. It was a niche that was just beginning to take off, and I saw an opportunity to get in early. I started offering package deals for influencers, providing them with high-quality images that they could use to promote themselves and brands they worked with. The business quickly snowballed. I began working with bigger influencers, local celebrities, and even a few businesses that were starting to grow their online presence. I was earning more than I ever thought possible, but I still felt overwhelmed. I couldn't handle all the work myself, and I knew it was time to scale up. That's when I hired my first assistant. I'll admit, it was terrifying. I wasn't making a ton of money, and the idea of paying someone else felt like a huge risk. But I was drowning in work, and I needed help. Hiring my assistant freed up my time to focus on growing the business, and over the next year, I started hiring more photographers, editors, and a social media manager. With a team in place, I could take on larger clients and expand my offerings. In 2019, I made the leap into full-time entrepreneurship. I quit my day job and started working for myself. It wasn't easy. There were months when I barely made enough to cover my expenses, and there were days when I questioned whether I had made the right decision. But every time I thought about giving up, I remembered why I started, because I didn't want to end up like everyone else I knew, stuck in a job I hated. Fast forward to 2025, and my photography business is thriving. We've worked with major brands, influencers with millions of followers, and even international clients. I now have a team of 12 people, and we've expanded into videography, content creation, and brand consulting. Our work is featured on big platforms like Instagram and TikTok, and we're known for our ability to create authentic, eye-catching content. I've learned so much along the way, not just about photography, but about business, resilience, and the power of persistence. It wasn't easy. There were countless sleepless nights, mistakes, and moments where I felt like throwing in the towel. But through it all, I stuck to my vision and kept working towards it, one step at a time. I'm not a millionaire yet, but I'm proud of what I've built. And most importantly, I'm finally in control of my future. I've learned that the road to success is rarely linear, and there's no one-size-fits-all path. What matters is the determination to keep going, even when it feels like everything is falling apart. 3 years ago, I sold half of my belongings and moved into my friend's basement to start a business based on an idea that came to me during a hangover. I was 32, burned out, underpaid, and convinced I was wasting my life. I'd spent almost a decade working in corporate marketing, mostly for mid-sized software companies, where I was excellent at making products look sexier than they actually were. It paid all right, came with the usual perks, and made my LinkedIn profile look great, but I couldn't escape the feeling that I was helping other people win at the expense of my own potential. The idea came after a company retreat in Vegas. We drank like lunatics, and the morning after, my boss asked me to throw together a brand strategy doc in the hotel lobby. I was shaky, dehydrated, and pulled something together using an old PowerPoint template I'd hacked together months earlier. It was ugly but functional, and my boss actually complimented it. That stuck with me. Later that week, I started asking friends in the industry if they had similar templates for brand strategy, campaign planning, persona mapping, and all the other crap we made clients pay for. Most did. Some were decent. Some were borderline works of art. So I started wondering, what if there was a marketplace for high-quality, customizable business templates, built by people who actually work in the field? Not generic Canvas slides, but detailed, functional docs that people could download and plug into real projects. Like an Etsy for business templates. I called it Slide Sprint. The initial plan was simple. Build a bare-bones Shopify store, get a few creators on board to sell their templates, and take a cut. I convinced a few marketing colleagues and a former MBA classmate to give me their old templates for free, with a revenue share, of course, and I designed a terrible logo in Figma. The whole thing took 2 weeks to launch and cost me $327. What I didn't realize was how badly I'd underestimated two things: traffic and trust. No one wanted to buy from a no-name template site with no reviews, no visible team, and vague descriptions like growth plan template, used to raise $2 million. Even with Google ads and Reddit posts, no one bit. In the first month, I made 2 sales, one from my girlfriend and one from my mom. I was angry, mostly at myself. Still, I didn't quit. I started emailing micro agencies and freelance consultants offering them a 70/30th revenue share if they'd let me list their internal templates. Some ignored me. Some told me to F*** off. But a few said yes. And the real breakthrough came when a fractional CMO named Tara shared her go-to-market toolkit. It was detailed, beautiful, and when I listed it for $79, it sold 11 times in 1 week. That was my first real taste of traction. I doubled down. Every evening after work, I emailed more creators. On weekends, I ran A/B tests on pricing and thumbnail design. I rewrote every product description to sound more human, more practical. My goal was simple: make buyers feel like they were stealing from a high-end agency. 2 months later, I was making $1,200 a month in net revenue. That's when I quit my job. It was a reckless move. I had maybe 4 months of savings and no backup plan. I moved into my best friend's basement, cut every expense I could, and committed to making SlideSprint work full-time. The next 6 months were an absolute grind. I woke up at 6:30 a.m. every day, ran cold outreach campaigns until noon, then worked on improving the site and onboarding creators until 10 p.m. I started hosting monthly webinars called Template Tuesdays, where creators broke down how they use their tools in real client work. It boosted trust and sales. The big tipping point came when I wrote a post on LinkedIn titled, "How I Made $4,113 Selling My Old MBA Assignments." It was cheeky, probably a little misleading, but it went semi-viral. Over 80,000 views in a week. Dozens of people messaged me asking how to list their own templates. I had finally created supply-side momentum. By the end of year 1, we had 312 templates on the platform, 80-plus creators, and a monthly revenue of just over $9,000. I hired my first part-time developer and moved into a tiny one-bedroom apartment. It felt like winning the lottery, but it wasn't smooth from there. One of our best-selling creators got angry when we changed our homepage layout and pulled all her templates. Another plagiarized a Notion creator and triggered a DMCA takedown. I learned the hard way that marketplaces are messy, people are unpredictable, and nothing scales like drama. The lowest point came when Stripe froze our account for unusual payout patterns due to an overseas creator blowing up overnight. For 2 weeks, we couldn't pay anyone. Creators were furious, and I seriously considered shutting it all down. But I didn't. I called Stripe support every day, fixed the issues, and manually sent payments from my own account to make things right. In year 2, we finally turned a corner. I invested in better onboarding tools, added template preview videos, and launched an affiliate program. We partnered with a few business schools to offer alumni discounts. By the end of that year, SlideSprint crossed $280,000 in annual revenue. Now, 3 years in, we're at $570,000 ARR. I have a team of 6, including a full-time creator success manager. We still don't take outside funding. Our top creator made $62,000 last year selling just 4 templates. We're not trying to be the next Canva. I don't care about hypergrowth. My goal is to build a calm, profitable business that helps experts monetize what they already know. The funny part is, I still have the original Hangover template that started it all. It's outdated, ugly as sin, and hasn't sold in over a year. But I keep it listed for $7, just to remind myself where I started. Some days, I miss the quiet chaos of building in that basement. But I'll take being my own boss over corporate free beer Fridays any day. If you're stuck in a job you don't love, here's my only advice. Take one small, dumb idea way too seriously. Obsess over it. Treat it like it's worth something, even if nobody else does yet. That belief is where all the good things start. I'm the guy who started a weird business by accident, and it ended up replacing my 9-to-5 and making me a millionaire. Sort of. Here's how it happened. I was 34, divorced, working as a quality assurance manager at a mid-sized manufacturing company. It was soul-crushing. My day consisted of Excel spreadsheets, passive-aggressive emails, and praying no one noticed I'd quietly stopped caring years ago. Every morning, I'd stare at the little microwave in the office kitchen and wonder if I could fit my head inside it just far enough to go out with a pop. Anyway, one weekend I helped my younger brother set up his dorm room. He had all this random stuff from Amazon, posters, foldable furniture, USB-powered fans, RGB lights. It looked like a streamer's closet exploded in there. But he mentioned one thing that stuck. He couldn't find a good footrest for under his desk. He wanted something soft, adjustable, and compact. Everything he saw online was either ugly, overpriced, or obviously dropshipped garbage. I have a hobby-level interest in woodworking. Nothing fancy, just built a few shelves and dog ramps over the years. That weekend, Out of boredom and curiosity, I built a little footrest using scrap plywood, some memory foam from an old pillow, and leftover fabric from my ex's sewing days. It was janky, but it worked. He took it back to school. 2 weeks later, he texted me. Yo, 3 guys in my dorm asked where I got the footrest. Can you make more? I laughed it off. Then he Venmo'd me $40 and said one guy wanted to buy it. So I made one. Then another. Then 5 more. I still had leftover materials, and the build only took about 30 minutes each. By mid-semester, I'd made 22 footrests and was out of foam. I jokingly called them footsie and printed little tags for them using my office printer. That was October. In December, my brother suggested we put a few on Etsy as a side hustle. I figured why not? I took some nice photos, wrote a cheesy product description, and listed 10 of them for $49.99 each. They sold out in 4 days. I made 15 more. Gone in a week. The first real turning point came when a TikTok micro-influencer ordered one, loved it, and made a video unboxing it. She had about 70K followers. The video hit 200K views. My Etsy DMs exploded. I had to pause the shop just to catch up. By March, I was spending every evening and weekend building these footrests. I upgraded my tools, bought bulk foam, taught myself how to use a sewing machine properly, shout out YouTube, and turned my garage into a mini workshop. I was selling 80 to 100 units a month at $54.99 each, and profit per unit after materials was around $28. It was still part-time money, but I could see potential. The reviews were all 5 stars. People loved this dumb little footrest. The comments were things like, saved my back, or perfect for my WFH setup. Then came the moment I jumped off the cliff. In May, my company started layoffs. I wasn't on the list, but it was clear the writing was on the wall. Middle management was doomed. I had a panic attack in the parking lot one Friday afternoon, called my brother, and said, what if I quit and go all in on footsie? To his credit, he didn't laugh. He said, you've sold more than 600 units without advertising. What could you do with 100% of your time? That night, I put in my notice. The next 6 months were hell and heaven, often in the same day. I learned supply chains aren't just buzzwords. My foam supplier ghosted me for 2 weeks in July. My PayPal account got locked during a holiday rush because they thought my sales spike was fraud. I accidentally sewed 30 covers inside out and had to redo them. But by December, I'd crossed $120,000 in gross revenue. I moved out of my rented duplex and into a small house with a detached garage that became my full-time studio. In year 2, I hired my first part-time employee, a high school kid named Marcus who helped me with sanding and packing. I invested in better branding, got a real logo made, and moved my site from Etsy to Shopify. My brother helped me set up some Google Ads and email marketing funnels. By the end of that year, I cleared $312,000 in revenue. I didn't become a millionaire overnight. But by the end of year 3, Footsie was pulling in just over $600,000 annually, with a consistent 40% profit margin. I had a 5-person team, a fulfillment center handling shipping, and a part-time virtual assistant handling customer service. Here's what I learned through all of this. 1. Start stupid small. One product, made out of scraps, solved a problem someone actually had. That was enough. 2. Customer feedback is your map. I didn't know what I was doing, but people told me what they loved and hated. I just listened. 3. Social proof advertising. That one TikTok video brought me more customers than $10,000 in paid ads. 4. You don't need to invent something. You just need to make something better, easier, or more human. Today, I work less than I did at my office job, make 4x the income, and actually like what I do. I still build prototypes in my garage. We're expanding into other ergonomic accessories soon, armrests, back cushions, etc. Sometimes I think about that microwave in the office kitchen. I was so close to giving up on trying. But instead, I made a footrest. And that dumb footrest built a life I didn't even think I deserved. So yeah, start the weird little business. It might be the smartest dumb thing you ever do. I never planned on becoming an entrepreneur. In fact, if you'd asked me 5 years ago where I saw myself, I'd have said middle management at a Fortune 500 company, maybe with a beach house if I got lucky. I had no great business idea, no venture capital contacts, no trust fund safety net. What I did have was burnout, a 2012 Honda Civic, and a deep hatred for PowerPoint. This all started in late 2019. I was working at a mid-sized consulting firm in Atlanta. The work wasn't terrible, but it wasn't fulfilling. My job revolved around delivering slide decks to clients that were 80% recycled material. The highlight of my week was when the coffee machine got replaced with one that could make cappuccinos. After 4 years, I had a creeping feeling that this wasn't going to be the life I wanted to live. Then COVID hit. We started working remotely. At first, I loved it. I had more time to myself, and no one cared if I wore the same shirt 3 days in a row. But by July 2020, the monotony started to crush me. I needed something to sink my teeth into. That's when I got into fermenting hot sauce. Totally random, I know. I bought a fermentation kit on a whim after watching a YouTube video. I figured I'd try making a few bottles just for fun. I started with basic habanero and garlic mixes, then got fancy with fruit blends like mango chipotle and pineapple cilantro. I gave some to friends. One of them, Chris, texted me a week later, "Dude, this is better than anything at Whole Foods. You should sell it." I laughed it off, but the idea stuck. What if I could turn this into something? By fall of 2020, I had a tiny Shopify store called Firetongue Ferments. I designed the label myself using Canva. I sold 5 bottles the first week, then 10 the next. It wasn't explosive growth, but people were buying. The feedback was good. And honestly, I was having more fun doing this than anything I'd done in years. My tiny kitchen turned into a pepper crime scene. My girlfriend at the time, now my wife, was a saint for putting up with it. We'd go to sleep smelling like vinegar and ghost peppers. I started sourcing peppers from local farms and taught myself basic supply chain management by trial and error. One Saturday in December, I dropped off 6 bottles to a boutique grocery store that specialized in local products. I didn't expect much. The manager said they'd see how they do. 2 days later, they called. Sold out. They wanted 24 more bottles. That's when I realized I had something real. I invested $3,000 from my savings into better equipment, a food processor, proper fermentation jars, a bottling funnel, and labels from a legit printer. I spent evenings fulfilling online orders and weekends cooking. I was still working full-time at the consulting firm, but I started waking up at 5 a.m. to get batches started. By spring 2021, I was doing about $3,000 per month in revenue. Not crazy money, but not nothing either. The margins were healthy, around 65% after COGS. My biggest expense was time. I couldn't scale without either quitting my job or outsourcing production. I had a long talk with my girlfriend. We looked at our finances, and I gave myself a 6-month runway. I put in my 2 weeks in May. Leaving my job was equal parts liberating and terrifying. No more steady paycheck. No more benefits. Just peppers and a dream. I leaned into local marketing. I showed up at every farmer's market within a 50-mile radius. I gave out samples like a man possessed. One day, a woman who ran a small chain of organic markets in the Southeast tried a spoonful and said, "We need this on our shelves." She ordered 120 units on the spot. I barely had enough bottles. I had to pull an all-nighter and bribe my cousin with pizza to help me finish the batch. That summer, Firetongue Ferments hit $10,000 in monthly revenue. I hired 2 part-time workers to help with bottling and fulfillment. I rented space in a shared commercial kitchen and got my food handler's certification. I also started running targeted Instagram ads with help from a freelancer I found on Upwork. By the end of 2021, we did $120,000 in sales. I paid myself a modest salary and reinvested the rest. I finally felt like a real entrepreneur. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. In early 2022, my main supplier had a crop failure and I couldn't get habaneros for 6 weeks. I had to scramble to find alternatives and reformulate some recipes. Customers complained. 1-star reviews trickled in. I learned the hard way about transparency and communication. I sent out personal apology emails with discount codes and a detailed explanation. Some customers came back. Some didn't. Lesson learned. I also got hit with a cease and desist in mid-2022 from a big hot sauce brand over the name Firetongue. They claimed it was too similar to their product, Flame Tongue. I consulted a lawyer, and while I might have had a chance to fight it, I couldn't afford a legal war. I rebranded to Tongue Torch Ferments, which honestly turned out better. The name was punchier and more memorable. Fast forward to 2023. We crossed $500,000 in revenue with 30% YOY growth. I brought production fully in-house and hired 5 full-time employees. We had SKUs in over 80 retail locations across 5 states. We also launched a subscription box that delivered a new small batch flavor every month. That became our best retention tool. My proudest moment? Getting a DM from a Michelin-starred chef in New York who said our charred peach plus scorpion pepper sauce was the best condiment I've tasted in years. We sent him a case. He put it on the menu at his bistro. I cried in my car after reading the news. Now, in 2025, we're preparing to raise a small seed round to expand into a full product line, fermented ketchups, mustards, maybe even pickles. I don't want to be just a hot sauce company. I want to build a fermented food empire. Sometimes I think back to my old life, the 9 to 5 grind, the corporate jargon, the performance reviews. I don't regret walking away. This business is hard. It's messy. I still have nights where I question everything. But it's mine. And there's something powerful about waking up every day and building something real with your own hands. If you're reading this and thinking about starting something, even if it's small, do it. You don't need to raise $1 million or reinvent the wheel. Just solve a problem, create something people love, and keep showing up. Also, don't underestimate the power of a good hot sauce. 3 years ago, I was a 29-year-old bartender in Tampa who hated Sundays. Not because of hangovers or working weekends. Sundays were when I'd balance my accounts, look at my life, and realize I was barely making rent. I had $48,000 in student loan debt, a leased car I couldn't afford, and no direction. My dream had always been to run my own business, but that felt like something people on LinkedIn did, not someone who made craft cocktails for drunk tourists. That changed because of dog poop. Yep, dog poop. It started when a regular at the bar, Rob, came in after work and mentioned how his new HOA fined him $150 for not picking up after his dog. I joked that I'd follow him around with a bag and charge $100 just to prevent that. He laughed. Then I laughed. Then we paused. That joke stuck with me. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how many people hate picking up after their dogs. Not just in backyards, but apartment buildings, dog parks, everywhere. What if I could build a service where people paid to not deal with poop? By Monday morning, I had a business name, Scoopy-Doo Tampa. Cringe, I know, but memorable. I started with a $250 budget, money I had saved to fix the brakes on my Jetta. I printed flyers at Office Depot, built a janky Woogs website, and opened a $12 per month Google Voice line. My pitch was simple. For $15 per week, I'd come to your house and clean up your yard. You didn't even have to be home. Just unlock the gate. My first client was a retired woman named Carol who had 2 labs and arthritis. She cried when I cleaned her yard the first time. I mean, full tears. Said it was the first time in years she didn't feel ashamed of letting the backyard go. That hit me hard. Within a month, I had 11 weekly clients. I bought a long-handled scooper, branded t-shirts, and recruited my cousin Mike to help on Saturdays. We were making about $1,800 per month. Nothing crazy, but I started thinking, could this be a real business? The turning point came in year 2. I was still bartending 4 nights a week and cleaning yards during the day. I was exhausted. But then something clicked. If I wanted to grow, I needed to stop thinking like a gig worker and start thinking like a business owner. I spent 2 weekends building an actual brand, not just a punny name. I hired a designer from Upwork for $150 to redo the logo, made a MailChimp newsletter for customers, and created a referral program. If you brought in a neighbor, you got a free week. That exploded. People in one gated community started signing up 5, 6 at a time. Suddenly, I had 70 clients and couldn't keep up. I hired 2 part-time workers, bought used gear off Craigslist, and paid for a CRM software to manage routes. At this point, I was making around $6,000 per month in revenue with about 40% margin. I quit bartending. Best and worst day of my life. I cried from fear that night. In year 3, I focused hard on systems. I created standard operating procedures, trained my team on customer service. You'd be surprised how personal people get about dog waste, and started offering tiered packages. For example, $15 per week was basic weekly cleanup. $30 per week included disinfectant spray and a doggy check-in for older clients who wanted someone to make sure their dogs were okay. That add-on became a surprise hit. Elderly dog owners especially loved it. One customer told me it gave her peace of mind when she traveled. Then came commercial clients. A property manager reached out after seeing one of our flyers and asked if we could service 3 dog parks at their apartment complexes. I quoted them $800 per month. They said yes. That one call led to 8 properties over the next year, and eventually I landed a contract with the city's Parks and Rec department to manage 12 dog stations. That added $4,500 per month to the books. As of today, we have 5 full-time employees, 2 branded vans, 300-plus recurring residential clients, and 23 commercial accounts. Our revenue last year was $317,000. My personal take-home is about $94,000, which still blows my mind considering I used to count quarters for gas. The name is still Scooby-Doo Tampa. I've debated changing it, but people remember it, and frankly, it works. I've been asked about franchising, and I'm considering it, but I'm cautious. I've never run a franchise, and I don't want to screw up a good thing because I got cocky. So why am I telling this story? Because I want people to know that entrepreneurship doesn't have to start with a pitch deck, a SaaS tool, or an MBA. Sometimes it starts with dog poop and a joke at a bar. What matters is whether you're willing to chase it, systemize it, and keep showing up, especially when it stinks. If you're stuck in a job you hate or scared to start your thing, ask yourself this. What are people already paying for that they secretly hate doing? That's your in. I'm not rich. I don't have a Lambo. But I own my time, help people, and no one can fire me. That's worth every scoop. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.